and the friends that they have, their entire social network, are enablers. They're people that are involved in the same lifestyle, doing the same kinds of things. And you know, any of you can, I think, relate to cutting off all your friends and trying to develop new friends. I mean, it's just a really scary thing for anybody. And it's doubly difficult if you've got that stigma of being an ex-offender. Not a lot of people want to be your friends if they're not folks that are involved in the same lifestyle. So if someone from a church mentors you, meets you at the door, takes you out for dinner, invites you to their church, introduces you to other people, maybe gives you some leads on where you might go ask about a job, and then when things don't work out, is meeting with you and encouraging you not to get discouraged. All those kinds of things. A mentor can just make all the difference in the world in terms of whether you allow your depression to just slip and get worse. It's the worst. I'm trying to think what I've got a friend that does a class with me called Stinkin' Thinkin'. He spent 17 years in prison, and we do a class together, which is another cognitive behavior change class. But there's a line he always tosses out about the worst friend you can have is yourself when you get out of jail, because you're just going to convince yourself that nobody cares and that there's no hope and so on. And you're the first person that's going to convince you to go out and do all of the inappropriate things. So, in mentioning that, the Stinkin' Thinkin' class. In the time I've been working with inmates, there's nothing that has become more obvious to me than that as people get older, regardless of what the criminal history is, the vast majority of them eventually get burned out on the lifestyle. They really, really figure out when they're 40, 50 years old, I just can't do this crap anymore. I'm getting too old. There's all these guys that are 20, 25 years old and are lifting weights all day long. If I go to prison again, they're constantly going to be up in my face challenging me. There's just a whole lot of things that start coming down the highway that you realize, ding, going back into jail and prison over and over and over again just isn't what I want to do with my life. And somehow they figure out how to do it, whether there's a support system there or not. So re-entry really is a young people's business for the most part. I mean, we try to help older people too, but the percentage of people that are going to get it who are older is relatively high. It's those that are 20 and 30 and have a 16-year-old mentality, think they're indestructible or they don't care whether they're destructible or not. Those folks that really, really need to be reached. And this class that I was talking about, Stinkin' Thinkin', and the 27 years that I have been involved, I've never seen anything where more people that are 22, 23 years old really seem to understand that they don't want to be where these guys sitting in the circle with them who are 40 and 50 years old and have been to prison 3 times. They don't want to live their lives. And that has made a real difference in getting people who are relatively young to buy into the notion that now is the time to get serious about changing what's going on in their lives. So it's getting kind of late, and I promised that I was going to leave lots of times for questions. I do want to mention that the Salvation Army put in for a grant to become a training center for mentors, and that is really encouraging. I don't know what chance they've got of getting the grant, but if we had a place where we could bring people of all faiths and those of us that don't have one, and I'm an agnostic, and I love to work with Buddhists and Latter-day Saints, and I don't care what your faith is. I really, really work to try to make sure that you've got a place in the jail. But I personally don't go to church, and that's not a part of my life. But having a place where folks from the faith-based community and others can come and really get good training on what you need to do to keep yourself safe, but be directly involved in these things. When you become a mentor, it isn't something where you should make a year commitment or any block of time. You've got to be serious about developing a friend, somebody that you're going to care what's going on in their lives 5, 10 years down the line. When their kids graduate from college, you want to be invited, or when they walk down the aisle. You want to really get a relationship going that's going to be long-term sustained, and somebody that's going to care about helping them to grow the new social network that's really, really critical to them changing their lives. Fire away, and if nobody has questions, I'll talk some more. Nobody has questions, so I'm going to have to stop.
We like listening to you.
Yeah. I know that I have many questions. I know that a lot of people probably process in their head and thinking, Paul's kind of role model a question that, so for jail, Devon's County Jail, not necessarily people's in there that are 15, 16, 17, what is the transition? How does the juvenile detention center and then jail work together? How does that work?
The Juvenile Detention Center is over in North Lawrence. Right. It's a consortium of 5 different counties, and in recent years, I don't think there's very many people at all who are housed there. They have to come there as mandatory school during the day and so on, but it is not run as a juvenile correctional facility for most of the people that are there. I really have very, very little connection with them. We don't have a lot of things that we share. The concern about mixing juveniles with adults was so strong that when we did build this facility, we had to build separate entrances for them to bring juveniles in and have places where we could lock all the adults that were down in the booking area out of sight while we processed a juvenile in, and then they were immediately brought over to North Lawrence. Well, they got rid of that ridiculousness now, and they're booked in over in North Lawrence, and we don't have to have this business 2 different doors and so on.
Why did they do that?
There's just a great deal of concern that juveniles that are exposed to adults, it's going to be like being exposed to AIDS. It's a lifelong thing that you're going to die of eventually. That's the easiest way I can say it. It was like the worst thing in the world that could happen to a juvenile is being exposed to an adult offender. It grows out of the years when they used to throw everybody in one big cage, and the old guys would teach the young guys all the bad habits they had, and so it became school of crime and so on. And of course, the young ones, you've seen all the movies, the young ones are the ones that are going to be the most abused and so on. Mm-hmm. And out of that mindset came this draconian rule that never they even see one another. And that, I want to say one more thing on that. One of the things that grew out of that was Scared Straight. They take a bunch of at-risk teenagers and they bring them into prison, and they coach the inmates, and they always get the ones that are biggest and baddest with all the tattoos all over them, and maybe not a nose ring, but all the accoutrements of our worst stereotypes of inmates, and they get them up there and they get get in their face, and they tell them, oh, if you come in, you're going to be my bitch, and all that kind of stuff. It took less than a year before most people being dragged into that kind of situation realized, this guy can't touch me. And so it just became a rite of passage to get into one of these programs, go into the prison and show how tough you were by getting up in the face of this big 300-pound gorilla that's been exercising every day, and just do everything you can to insult him and so on, because that guy can't touch you. So it became counterproductive. Very soon it became it wasn't worth the gas you put in the bus to bring the kids up to the prison, because they educated themselves very early on that this is a bunch of crap. And
a quick fix.
Yep.
Realize there's no quick fixes to these
right.
realities and transgenerational problems, but there's a process.
And there's been so much of a rite of passage that's come into the whole notion of spending some time in prison so that you've got your creds when you get back on the street. And as long as you've got that kind of mindset, it's very hard to get young folks to take seriously that this is something that's going to damage their lives by going into the system. Yeah.
Do you have a question?
You had a question.
Yeah. I'm just curious what the average schedule for an inmate is, how long they get to work within these programs on an average day.
Well, since at this stage, we haven't developed reentry along very much where the